So what if I told you guys that the sixth largest country in the world with a $3.48 trillion GDP just copied China's Bitcoin backflip? Well, that is what I think has just happened to this former global superpower that used to rule the world and have the global reserve currency only 150 years ago. So we're going to be exposing who that country is, what decision they just made about Bitcoin, which is pivotal. But before we talk about why this country has backflipped, we need to actually understand what their original position on Bitcoin and digital currency was only a short time ago. And this video is probably going to give away what country we're talking about today. But for those who missed it, this is the former Prime Minister of the UK.
Today, I'm proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice.
So that was the former stance of digital currencies from the UK. A little bit Orwellian, a little bit, let's say, globalist. They're looking to, globally coordinate and create CBDCs. But why has the policy changed? What's new? What is the backflip? And why does this copy China's Bitcoin backflip? Well, let's have a look at this article right here, because I think it's a banger. This came out this week. This is new news. And the UK has now introduced a bill to classify not only crypto assets, but Bitcoin as personal property. So this is massive. And as the article says, this is a landmark move, and it happened only days ago, that is now going to be treating Bitcoin as property, okay? This is a really big move. Now, what does this mean? If it is property, what exactly does that mean? Well, it's going to provide a lot more legal protection to those people holding property. Some people have been speculating that maybe, just maybe, this could open up the door for removing capital gains taxes in the country of the UK, who is the 6th largest country in the world. Now, why is this significant? Just have a look at how big the UK economy is. There's a lot of people squatting on Bitcoin in the UK who are probably afraid to use it or afraid to start a business because of the really, let's say, high tax hurdles in the UK. Let's keep it YouTube friendly. Let's just say they haven't had the historically most friendly rules and regulations. Doing business in the UK is a little bit like pulling teeth, the same way it is trying to do business in America or Australia or New Zealand, all of these bloated Western nation states who do have high GDPs, but also high debt loads. It's always very difficult to do business in these countries because Uncle Sam's always trying to get a cut, okay? Uncle Sam doesn't want the private sector making money. And we can see in the UK's case, they got a GDP of just a lazy $3.4 trillion, making them the 6th largest, country in the world. But what's really interesting about this potential backflip that we are seeing from the UK is the fact that they have a new prime minister. So this is interesting because, again, Rishi Sunak, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, he was obviously the former Prime Minister of the UK. And let's just say the political landscape in the UK has been very volatile of late. Who remembers Liz Truss, who was the shortest serving UK Prime Minister in history? She was in office for under 60 days, and she wanted to reform the UK. She wanted to, lower taxes, even try to balance the budget a little bit. And that was obviously when the UK gilt market absolutely blew up in 2023. That was when the Bank of England had to come in and start doing a little bit of QE and tinkering with monetary policy and playing around with interest rates just a little bit while official CPI in the country was still at 10%, which was unprecedented. And it really does kind of give us a little bit of a glimpse into the future. And it kind of tells us, what are these Western nation states going to have to do with their interest rates, their monetary policy, their enormous debt loads? I believe the UK did give us a glimpse into the future. A lot of people were saying, oh, but Luke, the Fed can't cut interest rates with inflation above the Fed's 2% inflation target. They can't. That goes against their mandate. But again, I think all of the rules have been changed. They've already done that by bailing out the banks in March 2023 with that BTFP program. That's essentially yield curve control for banks and bailing out the banks, telling the banks, yeah, you know what? If your bonds are down by 30 to 40% on their value, don't worry about that. Just give them to us and we'll give you a year-long loan to make up that money. That was what the BTFP program, which is what some people have called buy the effing dip. That's what that program essentially meant. There's a dip in asset markets. The Fed stepped in and said, yeah, you know what? We're going to bail it out. Okay. And at the time, inflation wasn't at 2 or 3% like it is right now in the US. I believe it just ticked below 3% recently. In the UK, it's a little bit higher. And I believe that now that we do have a new prime minister in the UK, maybe things are going to be changing. So Rishi Sunak, no longer the prime minister. He was historically, let's say he was a little bit indifferent to Bitcoin and crypto assets, but he was certainly a little bit more favorable to CBDCs. Obviously making this video, that was all kinds of Orwellian when that came in. But they have a new prime minister over there in the UK. I apologize if I butcher his name, but it is Keir Starmer. And I think it's interesting that we are seeing new bills being introduced by the UK that look potentially a little bit more welcoming to Bitcoin, potentially regarding it as property. Again, I want to go straight to the source. This is the official UK government website. You can see it as clear as day. New bill introduced in Parliament to clarify crypto's legal status. This isn't just some crazy rumors that we're seeing circulating on Twitter. These are real government official documentations. Bitcoin and other digital assets can be considered personal property under new draft law introduced into Parliament today, 11th of September 2024, this week. And this is on the official government website, okay? And they're almost sounding like I hate the word, crypto people. If you read this full announcement, we're not going to do it. We like to keep these videos short and sharp for you guys so you do get the news in a very kind of condensed format. But the summary is, I think it's a little bit of a backflip. Now, why does it relate to China? And why did I talk about China? And what is the relation to private property and Bitcoin being private property in the UK? And what is the relation there to Southeast Asia? I want to talk about that in a moment. Before we do talk about that, I obviously wanted to give a quick shout out to the show's flagship sponsor, and that is Rhino Bitcoin. So for you who may not be aware of what Rhino is and what they're doing, they're essentially going to be becoming the all-in-one Bitcoin application. You can do literally everything on Rhino. You can buy Bitcoin on Rhino, sell Bitcoin on Rhino. You can withdraw your Bitcoin from Rhino and pay other people using the Lightning Network, which obviously saves you on fees. If we do ever see a massive big spike in fees again, it's essential that you're using a Bitcoin wallet that actually has the Lightning Network enabled. Don't be using Coinbase. Coinbase has tried not to use Lightning Network for the past 6 or 7 years. They've only very recently shown interest in allowing its users to use the superior option. And that is what the Lightning Network is. But of course, this is what Rhino offers all of its customers. You can use a superior application. As you can see, it is linked in the live chat for anybody who wants to check it out. And as you guys can see, Rhino has a pretty slick user interface. They have a really nice color scheme. You can buy and sell Bitcoin. Rhino has some really cool videos on their website that I'd encourage you guys to check out that explains who they are and what they're doing and why they are going to be the banking solution from the future. So with all that said, check out Rhino Bitcoin today. And let's get into talking about this relation to China. And we are going to have to be reading the comments in a moment. Producer Pam has alerted me that there could be some interesting angles in the comment that we're going to be taking a look at. And believe it or not, that video was not an AI generated video of Richie Sunak. That was an official video from a couple of years ago. And it really did sound scripted, really Orwellian, and it looked AI scripted. It was so unbelievably strange that it did look like an AI related video. We're going to come back to the comments in a moment, but where's the China angle fit into this story? Why do I think the UK is copying China's Bitcoin backflip? Let's have a look at this article right here. So we can see here, everybody knows that, before I show you that article, everybody knows that China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021. Okay, it's still banned in the country officially today in 2024. The official narrative is Bitcoin's banned in China. It's bad, it's illegal. If you're caught using it, you're going to jail. Essentially, I'm oversimplifying here just for the video. But what I found really interesting was in 2022, there appeared to be a little bit of a pivot in the court system and how they regard Bitcoin in China. I still haven't really seen a whole lot of clarification. But what we do know is that the Chinese court essentially came out and contradicted the government's stance on virtual currencies, declaring them to be legal property. Again, this is exactly what the UK government is trying to do. They're trying to clarify their stance and say, look, Bitcoin is legal property. They haven't come out yet and said, look, we're going to eliminate all, capital gains on Bitcoin, or we're going to make Bitcoin legal tender. But again, some people say, the governments always leave little hints and clues for the insiders so that they can prepare their bags, position themselves for the future, and maybe, again, hypothetically, in the future imaginary scenario, maybe the UK is going to wipe capital gain taxes for Bitcoin. Or even, again, hypothetical, maybe the UK is going to make Bitcoin legal tender in the future. Some people are making those speculations, and they're saying that maybe, just maybe, announcements like the one we just saw on the official government of the UK are kind of there to inform the insiders and let those people know, okay, this is interesting. Maybe we need to position ourselves. And some people are making the same speculations about China. There's been rumors flying over Twitter for the past 3 months saying China is going to unban Bitcoin in Q4 this year, around the same time of the US election. We saw more recently that Hong Kong, there was a legislator, a politician in Hong Kong, urging his government to copy what the US is doing. He said, we need a strategic reserve of Bitcoin in Hong Kong. Okay? Again, Hong Kong is the Chinese-controlled vassal state in Asia. So again, this is interesting. And again, this is the backflip that I think maybe, just maybe, the UK could be copying. Because I think there's a very clear backflip in China after they banned Bitcoin mining in 2021. Okay? There were many cases in Chinese court in 2022 and 2023 where they were essentially saying, look, Bitcoin is private property in the country of China, which kind of, contradicted what the government was saying and doing with Bitcoin. And that's obviously interesting because China also did a little bit of a backflip in its Bitcoin mining. Okay, everybody knows 60% of the global Bitcoin hash rate dropped offline in early 2021 when China banned Bitcoin mining. 6 months later, 22% of the global Bitcoin hash rate was mysteriously found in China. There was no rule change. There was no clarification from the CCP. Obviously, speculation has been rife since 2021. We still don't know why. We have about 20% of the global hash rate supposedly in China, mining in China. We also know that Bitmain, one of the companies that produces 90% of the global Bitcoin ASICs that's used for mining all around the world, not just in China, 90% of the world's chips are made by one Chinese company, Bitmain. So again, when you combine all of these strange anecdotal pieces of evidence with China's Bitcoin backflip in the court system, things are interesting. Things really look to be heating up a little bit. Let's just say that. Things are really, really getting interesting. And I think the fact that the UK is coming out and, as All Night Hider says, potentially making Bitcoin private property. Maybe the UK is warming up to Bitcoin. We do know we've seen some interesting things pop out of the EU recently. Obviously, the UK is associated with the EU, despite the more recent Brexit shenanigans over the past decade. But the EU, there's been lots of countries in the EU kind of pivoting, moving strongly towards Bitcoin. We had one of the largest central banks in the EU, two of those, the Central Bank of Norway and the Central Bank of Switzerland, both buying MicroStrategy recently. Incredible. I still cannot believe that is actually happening in the country. In the EU. It is one of the more, let's say, anti-Bitcoin regions the EU has been historically, which is interesting. But we did do a live stream on that topic. So again, if you missed that live stream, I encourage you guys to check that out. As you can see, that was the second most recent live stream we did. These two nations are printing fiat to buy Bitcoin. You can see the flags there on each side of Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor on the thumbnail because they're buying MicroStrategy. Incredible. Just absolutely incredible. The comments in the live stream are absolutely on fire. But with all that said, guys, I think we need to be keeping an eye on what the UK is doing. I think it's really interesting that potentially the country that was the global hegemon in the 1800s and held the global reserve currency in the early 1900s, mind you, only 100 years ago, could be piquing a little bit of interest into Bitcoin. So I'd encourage you guys to keep an eye on what the UK is doing. Geo says, I want Bitcoin to become currency, not property. I would love that as well. And it's certainly a potential. And again, we've got 1,227 of you guys tuning in who seem to be interested in what the UK is doing. If you enjoyed the video, again, we'd appreciate a smashing or a bruising of the like button. We're told that helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you did miss that more recent video of talking about Switzerland and the Central Bank of Norway quietly accumulating MicroStrategy shares, it's on screen right now for you guys to check out. So I'd encourage you guys to check that out. And if you didn't see our most recent interview, we may or may not be seeing the next El Salvador, the next Bitcoin country. We had the pleasure of recently interviewing Maya, who is the favorite to be the next leader of Suriname, a South American country. We all know that Samson Mow has been to the country. And Samson Mow's met with Maya on a number of occasions. And in our recent interview that dropped Sabado? I believe it was Saturday. Sorry, my brain's working in Spanish right now. We believe we've dropped our interview on Saturday. As you can see, we talked with Maya, who could potentially be the next Bitcoin president, and she talked about her plans for Bitcoin. So if you missed that interview, check it out. And with all that said, guys, thank you so much.